Testosterone replacement therapy is the hottest trend in men's health right now. Studies show that prescriptions for TRT have increased about 500% in the US since the early 2000s. Despite its popularity though, there are several widely pervasive myths that dominate the conversations about TRT. And in this video, I will give a rapid overview of the 7 biggest TRT myths, and in upcoming episodes, each one will be unpacked in detail. I'm Dr. Bronson. I'm a board-certified internist and the founder of B3 Clinic, a multi-state preventative medicine clinic focused on the treatment of men with obesity and metabolic syndrome. Let's get started. Myth number 1, TRT is only for men with quote-unquote low T. So first of all, the term low T is a marketing term. It's not a medical term. It's a term that's used by so-called TRT and men's health clinics, usually to describe low blood levels of testosterone. But as I said, low T is not a medical condition. The correct term is hypogonadism. Hypogonadism is where your testes, due to a number of potential reasons, fail to produce adequate amounts of testosterone, and that failure causes clinical signs and symptoms such as fatigue, low sex drive, reduced erectile function, loss of muscle mass and obesity, or another number of potential other symptoms. Hypogonadism is never diagnosed on the basis of blood testosterone levels alone. There must always be symptoms present, like one of the ones that I just mentioned. This is the first reason why myth number 1 is false. TRT should never be given to someone on the basis of their testosterone levels alone. A second problem with this myth is there's issues with what constitutes low levels. The current guidelines by major medical societies, such as the American Urologic Association and others, usually define low testosterone as a total testosterone level of less than 300 nanograms per deciliter on 2 morning readings in patients with symptoms, such as one of the ones I just mentioned. But these cutoffs are arbitrary, number 1, and they rest on shaky assumptions. The first problem is that they're derived from a so-called healthy young adult population. This is a very dubious reference group, modern society, and I explain this in my video called The Truth About Normal Testosterone Levels, linked in the description below. A second major problem is that serum testosterone levels cannot ever fully capture the efficiency and the effectiveness of total androgen signaling, especially in a population with a high prevalence of metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is basically where you have excess abdominal obesity, insulin resistance, usually coupled with high blood pressure and cholesterol abnormalities. Studies show that a third of adult men in the US, 35% to be precise, actually have metabolic syndrome. The problem with metabolic syndrome, it interferes with the actions of androgens, including testosterone, obviously, at multiple levels. It interferes with testosterone production, but it also interferes with transport, how testosterone gets to cells, and how testosterone interacts with its receptors. An example is that in metabolic syndrome, skeletal muscle develops what's called metabolic inflexibility. This is where your skeletal muscle cannot switch from burning sugar or glucose to fatty acids efficiently. So what happens is you build up toxic lipid byproducts from incomplete oxidation of fatty acids. The issue with that is that those toxic byproducts can directly damage androgen receptors, so that even with normal testosterone levels, the receptor functions ineffectively or not at all in some cases. So this is just one example of how metabolic syndrome can interfere with androgen signaling outside of actually changing your testosterone levels itself. A third major problem with these normal lab cutoffs, so-called, is that it assumes that men who fall into this normal range can't benefit from TRT. But there are randomized controlled trials in men, especially with metabolic syndrome, and especially if the trials are treating them with injectable testosterone, that show that these men can benefit from a body composition and insulin sensitivity standpoint, regardless of whatever their starting serum testosterone values. Myth number 2, when on TRT, estrogen is bad or needs to be controlled. TRT raises estrogen levels, especially estradiol levels. Some of it gets converted to estradiol via the aromatase enzyme. There are TRT clinics and doctors that are known to give men with so-called high estrogen levels drugs to counteract the presumed negative effects that estradiol has. Estradiol is blamed for all manner of side effects in men on TRT, from water retention to breast enlargement and moodiness. Aside from gynecomastia, the proliferation of glandular breast tissue under the nipple, it's not clear that estradiol is responsible or even contributes to any of these common side effects. Another issue with this myth will be shocking to some people, but it turns out that actually most benefits of TRT, especially when it comes to metabolism and sexual function, are effects of estradiol. They are not direct effects of testosterone. Not only that, estradiol is a crucial antioxidant and is one of the main reasons why some testosterone is converted to estradiol, is to balance the negative effects of testosterone on something called cellular redox. Basically, testosterone increases reactive oxygen species, especially in heart muscle and endothelial cells, which are cells that line blood vessels, and reactive oxygen species can damage these cells. There's some interesting research that has shown that estradiol is what is primarily responsible for counterbalancing this effect. Myth number 3, TRT causes or increases the risk for prostate cancer. This is a pervasive myth that has been talked about at length all over the internet, most notably and most credibly by Dr. Abraham Morgentaler. This myth stems largely from a 1940s experiment involving a single patient. Modern evidence shows no increase in the risk of incident prostate cancer with TRT, and some studies even hint at reduced risk. In a future video, we'll explore the origins of this myth and why it is wrong. Myth number 4, TRT always improves libido and erectile function. This is a myth that is pushed by unethical hormone and TRT clinics. The fact is, TRT has only ever consistently been shown to improve libido and erectile function in hypogonadal men, aka men with very low testosterone levels and very reduced sexual function. Myth number 5, Clomid, HCG, and enclomiphene are natural, just as good substitutes for testosterone. Clomid and enclomiphene are drugs called selective estrogen receptor modulators, and HCG is a drug that mimics the effect of another hormone called luteinizing hormone, or LH. All of these drugs can raise your serum testosterone levels, but the problem is that simply raising testosterone levels is not good enough to produce the same benefits as testosterone itself. This is a complex issue that I explain in my upcoming book called The Real TRT, but it turns out that raising serum testosterone levels isn't where the benefits of testosterone primarily come from. We have several studies over several decades showing that these drugs do not produce anywhere near the same degree of benefit as actual testosterone. And this is particularly true when it comes to body recomposition, strength gains, or metabolic outcomes. All of this will be discussed, of course, in an upcoming video. Myth number 6, you must donate blood regularly on TRT to reduce blood thickness. So TRT increases your red blood cells. When your red blood cells increase, that's something called erythrocytosis, that increases something called blood viscosity. Blood viscosity is not the same thing as thickness. The problem with increased blood viscosity is that it can increase your risk for blood clots. So sometimes TRT patients do need to donate blood. The medical term for that is phlebotomy. But phlebotomy should be carried out when red blood cells reach a reasonably high enough threshold to become a concern. And this threshold is much higher than most TRT clinics and even primary care doctors believe it is. I believe the best evidence is when your hematocrit reaches a level of at least 55%. In future videos, I'll explain why I think this is a reasonable cutoff and also get into the details of why over-donating blood is a serious problem. Myth number 7, TRT has 0 cardiovascular risks. So this is a newer myth that is pushed mostly by ignorant, self-styled experts on social media. The origin of this myth is, I think, due to the media hype surrounding a paper that was released in the New England Journal of Medicine in the summer of 2023 called the Traverse Trial. The Traverse Trial was a trial that looked at the cardiovascular safety of testosterone over a 2 to 3 year period in elderly men. In February of this year, based largely on the fact that the Traverse Trial did not find any really statistically significant negative cardiovascular effects from testosterone, the FDA removed the black box warning on testosterone products sold in the United States. So previously, testosterone products had a big warning on them saying that there was a potential cardiovascular risk, that it could increase your risk for heart attacks and strokes, things like that. And the FDA removed that in February of this year. This action by the FDA caused a lot of extremely ignorant people to go around saying, this is proof that TRT is risk-free for the heart. There are several problems with this moronic statement though, and the biggest problem is that the Traverse Trial participants and the way that they were given testosterone and the doses of testosterone they were given resembles almost nothing like what most TRT patients receive, especially at TRT clinics in the United States. Because of this, the answer to whether or not there is a long-term cardiovascular risk to TRT is still largely unknown for the vast majority of patients. And the FDA, when it removed the black box warning, did not state that there was no long-term cardiovascular safety risk to TRT, just that there's currently insufficient evidence of harm. Insufficient evidence of harm is not proof of safety though. That's my overview of the 7 most common TRT myths. Please subscribe to the channel and be on the lookout for future videos where we explain each of these 7 myths in greater detail.